It is going. There it is. It takes a second, and we are live. We got your walkout music, little pixies. Don't sue us or take us down. YouTube. Where is your mind? And these guys, you guys are coming to us from New Jersey.
Yep, New Jersey.
And are you near Morristown? I mean, that's obviously
Yeah.
Karianne and 20 years.
20 minutes from Morristown.
Oh, 20 minutes. Yes.
Yeah.
And you've been there for a long time too.
Where? In Morristown?
New Jersey, the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, New Jersey. Yeah. Almost lifers, which is unfortunate, but true.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I was checking out the other one with Bill. I forgot which podcast it was, talking about Montana and how, like, if you've been there for 5 years, you're now a native. And I forget which podcast that was. But yeah, so Karianne, Anthes, say the name right, people, and Bill, her partner, husband. And little story of how I know Karianne is I did my CrossFit level 1 in Morristown, CrossFit Morristown, 2010. And I got this lovely shirt. Back then, for anyone familiar with CrossFit, this is we joke about this, the best $1,000 t-shirt you'll ever get. And then this was the worst $1,000 t-shirt you'll ever get. But yeah, this was just like leftovers from the CrossFit games that they were doing. And yeah, all the fun sponsors for any old school CrossFit people. Progenics, I didn't even notice that earlier. They're just the headliners there. Yeah. Weightvest.com. And
hey, at least Concept 2 is still going strong. I see Greg at the games behind the scenes, and they're
skins. I bought my whole family skins for Christmas.
I still have a few pairs from those days, and you would see. Was it Austin Malleolo was the one, head to toe? He
looked like a Jedi, like something from Star Wars.
Stormtrooper.
Yeah. Anyway, that jumps us into a little bit of our first topic, and I'm gonna turn that off. So Karianne was again. You were one of the. I remember you did the air squat demo. That was one of the things, and that was an interesting crew of I think Jason Ackerman was there, John Gilson of Again Faster fame, one of the sponsors there. I'm trying to remember who else was there. It was definitely a few. I think I'm pretty sure
maybe.
James, I think he was, and I think Jason Ackerman at the time was just interning.
Jason Ackerman had the longest internship ever, so he probably interned for like 5 years.
Yeah, and I forgot. Oh, and I think Boz would have been the flow master, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. And yeah, I think Hobart was there. Dave Lipson probably was there, I think.
I have a picture of this seminar as we're.
I do. I have one somewhere. Are you pulling it up now?
I'll have to think about.
I don't know how to give you permission to share that.
Oh, well, I'll have to find it.
I think there's a way to do that. But I do have the little photo at the end. Yeah, that was definitely my first foray, kind of, and took me from the traditional physical therapy space to this whole crazy world, and eventually got me to Dubai, where I opened my own CrossFit gym there, CrossFit Gold Box, and met my wife, and that was 2.5 years of time that I can't get back. No, I had some good stuff that happened there. But Bill is Green Beret, and your only real relation to CrossFit was through her owning the box, right? Or was there more?
I mean, I got my level 1 before I met her.
Okay.
And then walked into a CrossFit gym and met her, and the rest is kind of history.
Well, and then he was also on seminar staff.
And then once I got out of the army,
little thing.
Only one of the he's gonna kill me for saying this, but 2 internships.
Yeah,
I was like, it's gonna take a while, so be patient. First one, you're not gonna do anything. He calls me at lunch after the first, whatever he had Chuck. He's like, Chuck's making me teach the presses. I'm like, oh well, that's
a good sign.
Normal, but good for you. So, but yeah, so he was on staff, which is kind of cool that we shared in that experience.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, and you did spend some time in the Middle East, I believe. Then, Bill.
Yep.
As a Green Beret.
Yeah.
How long were you out there?
4 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So obviously, with the backgrounds that you both had, and let's finish off the first part of that whole thing of ending that CrossFit era.
Mhm.
especially for Karianne, who is one of the celebrities of CrossFit in this weird space that we have, right? I would say. I think I guess, would you describe yourself as kind of like a, you didn't really want that spotlight? Is that that kind of the impression I had of you?
Yeah, I don't know. Was I a celebrity? I'm not really sure. I guess that's
I
out
mean,
for
I think for those of us who entered this, like, we all
OG.
OG, we had,
Mhm.
everyone quotes Nasty Girls and Annie
Mhm.
Sakamoto and doing the muscle ups, and those were like part of that. But also, we would geek out into the whatever videos were on CrossFit.com, and I know that's how I studied for my level 3 exam, was like I just had to
Right,
watch
right.
every video on there. So you were obviously involved with, you made your way through some of those videos, and probably
Yeah.
part of a handful of, like, whatever it was, 30 names that
Yeah.
make it in there. But yeah, and
Yeah, sure. I mean, I I think I had the opportunity to be involved in most of the, I worked on seminar stuff. I was an affiliate owner. I was a regional athlete. I, worked for Dave in the games, which was cool. And I got to work for CrossFit for Hope, which was the, philanthropic arm for a while there with the kids initiative. Um, so yeah, it's kind of cool that I got to be part of many of the things that CrossFit, the outlets, the buckets, I suppose. But yeah, so that
yeah, I
was
think
that was that was my experience.
and I think we'll look back at that time as a very unique kind of growth of the fitness industry, and we're going to talk a little about what those next steps are. But maybe you want to tell us a little bit about, yeah, why you're kind of leaving that space, and where the that lies, and obviously, yeah, I'm excited to talk about the next steps. But give us a little of yeah, what made you kind of shift directions?
Yeah, I guess for, looking at that progression from like, I found CrossFit just I was already a trainer, I was in the fitness space, someone mentioned it to me. Of course, like many people, I did a couple of the workouts, thought they were absolutely ridiculous and stupid, and like these numbers don't even make sense. And then there was a seminar, so I thought, continuing education was something I was always passionate about. But that seminar was for sure life changing in that the thing that attracted me to fitness was truly that it was something you could help people make a significant impact in their lives with, like through fitness as a vehicle for that. Um, and I felt like CrossFit was the first thing I encountered that really captured that potential and that essence. Um, and I still think it does. Um, but I suppose in evolving through my own experience with the sport, I guess more so probably the sport of it, um, and just my own studies and diving deeper into human movement and the the I won't say neuroscience, but like your
Yeah.
brain and everything we now know about the nervous system and your own experiences of sport and life. Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm looking for what's beyond CrossFit. I think CrossFit is an awesome part of uh, a fitness program. I think it has a tremendous value. I think the community is incredible. It's changed fitness, the landscape of it. But for me personally and professionally, I think I'm interested in diving a little bit deeper into how going back to those roots of movement as a vehicle for change. Um, and so that kind of over the last few years was sort of where it was going, and I felt like with that regard, the gym itself, the affiliate being a place for a little bit more emphasis on just fitness, having people come in, have fun, move their bodies, great, but it was starting to be a little bit of a not the right fit for my pursuits. So what's awesome is someone who's been part of the community for a long time can kind of pick up and continue on what we started, which was awesome. But for me professionally and personally, just being able to dive deeper into what I'm interested in, which I don't think CrossFit can fulfill, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. I've been watching the space for like since around 2010 myself, and it's been interesting. Yeah, owning my own affiliate, going out to Dubai to open it, seeing how different cultures take it. Again, getting to travel around the world, different regionals and aspects of that. I also intern with seminar staff a little bit out there in the Middle East. I have my stories about that. We can talk about another time. And yeah, it was it's definitely interesting to see where it is evolving, and that is kind of our next
Mhm.
piece of it, of how folks and things like F45 and
Sure.
Orange Theory have all sprung up out of the success that I think CrossFit did skyrocket around that time, 2010, and maybe into 2015, when maybe it plateaued, I
Sure.
would say. And since then it's kind of been this people pulling pelotons and different things in different directions. And yeah, then also interestingly, following again a lot of those celebrities, if we can call you guys that, from those days, Brian McKenzie going over to
Yeah.
again sort of similar stuff of breathing and again getting more in touch with, like, there's more to this whole thing. I worked with James Fitzgerald, who is kind of enemy of CrossFit, or again, I'm not, we're not here to
There's a
go in.
list.
Yeah.
Just sort of
um
ridiculous, but that's
yeah,
also another topic for another day.
yeah, but just exploring that whole concept of where, there seems to be a lot of good stuff here.
Mhm.
Talking in depth to folks about what their good experiences, bad experiences, why they have negative experiences or positive experiences, has been really interesting. And that's why I love doing this podcast, hearing from folks like you guys around what that evolution has been, and where is the good, where is the bad, what should
Yeah,
we discard. Again, nobody has all the answers. So
sure.
again, it's been really interesting hearing that. So yeah, that takes us into this kind of second topic, if you will, of CrossFit, as it's generally seen, is this kind of what people want, is this near death experience, as you described it. Your words, not mine. No.
Yeah.
And the future kind of being, and we're definitely seeing it in a lot of ways, and it's really cool to again see the entire industry have this little undercurrent almost of um, getting in touch with your nervous system and being more connected, the awareness of the breathing, and just understanding how to again engage your nervous system, all the cold plunges and hot plunges and saunas and all these different things. So that I'll let you kind of go with what is next for the fitness industry.
Yeah, and I guess to just backtrack for CrossFit, I do think, one of the things, I guess, sort of in its defense, and we'll see what happens with it. But, as much as the games are incredible, I watched the games last week. I thought Boz did a great job. Like, it's incredibly impressive what these humans, we'll call them humans, I guess they're humans, what they can do. Um,
Yeah.
but it is sort of like, I always use the analogy of like the NFL versus like whatever the Pee Wee football is. I mean, yes, it's the same sport, the same movement, whatever, but they're not even comparable. And I think, unfortunately, we're not at the point where people in an affiliate get that distinction enough. It's too
Hmm.
blurry. And so nobody, I think, would say that athletes, NFL players, whatever athlete you want, are the healthiest people.
Hmm.
But we're kind of saying that, like, well, because it's under the umbrella of CrossFit, they are healthy, and I don't, and then that gets very muddy. So sort of to go back to the health and, the fitness continuum, health, wellness continuum, and all the things that sort of get preached, to say like, well, what's next is, I don't know that that is all inclusive enough. So when we talk about different people, Brian McKenzie, the nervous system, like, we're kind of still putting on blinders, and the industry has, what we've learned in the last 5 years, 10 years, about breathing, about heart rate, about, we're still not, in my opinion, CrossFit's kind of like still putting on the blinders and still saying about the heart rate monitor in the endurance community. And I think that's short-sighted. So where I think that the industry is going, I think we've come out of, like, every decade has its thing. And you've been in fitness a long time, in PT, and like, I don't know if you know who Ben Bruno is.
Hmm.
He's like
Yep.
the trainer, and
Yep.
he's funny,
Trainer
and
to
he
the
had like a,
stars.
yeah, and he had like a Bosu ball in the trash can the other day, and he was like, "Oh, finally, like the perfect place for a Bosu ball." And it was kind of a funny like nod to some of that stuff. But every decade of fitness has had its thing, you know. And I feel like this past phase we've all been in, and they all, something positive or something we've learned like carries, you know, forward from it. But this has all been about intensity, you know, Orange Theory, F45, CrossFit. And I think what we've learned and where we're going is realizing like, okay, that's intensity is good. We need intensity. It wasn't really there in step aerobics and then those kinds of things back, you know, 20 years ago. But now we're kind of seeing like, ooh, maybe maybe it's too much. What do we need to do to balance that out? And my experience in our CrossFit affiliate, because we tried before we parted ways, we tried to, okay, we can, you know, not change the whole culture. I think we've come up with, you know, what, and this is kind of, I guess, later down the discussion, but how to apply some of these concepts to a CrossFit gym. But I do think some of the challenges are that space and that environment. It makes it really hard for someone to not just go super intense all the time. And so I think where the industry is going is recognizing we need a balance. We need to learn to like reconnect with what the body signals are, what they're telling us. And that might sound really woo-woo, but you take something as simple as hunger. We've come through like a decade of people like not listening to when they're actually hungry and just following a clock. And so you ask people like, hey, like just, well, when are you hungry? Well, I don't know, because I ignore that. So it's sort of coming back to like the body is way smarter than we give it credit for. How do we kind of simplify that in the industry and have a little more balance versus just every day crush ourselves? And if you don't crush yourself, then you're a piece of shit and you are a failure. Like, because that's kind of been a little bit of the loop. So I think I'm hoping that we're moving away from that and not having fitness continue to be this sort of, if everything's a nail, you're a hammer, or whatever. I always get that thing wrong, but you know. So
no, that's the right one.
yeah.
That all makes sense. And again, I've definitely been watching that as a physical therapist, especially with great interest, to say the least. Of, you know, again, a lot of the joke in the medical space is, yeah, they're putting my kids through college, like CrossFit, definitely, you know, to orthopedic surgeons and all the slap tears and things like that. And you know, there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff there where, yeah, it's we're gonna do the nail hammer kind of concept that you're talking about for sure. So yeah, so where between the ears is the next venture, and let's dive into that and how that's kind of you know, providing maybe an alternative, and based on everything we just talked about, to this beat you down methodology.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. You know, so between the ears, it really can be described, I think, best as like a lens through which you view whatever pursuit.
I put you on. Don't worry, you're good.
Oh, sorry. I thought, oh my God, we lost him.
No, you're good.
And so it's not what it's like, kind of like everything and nothing at the same point, in that it's not a type of workout. It's not what you do, but much more how you're doing it, how you're engaging with it. And with it's really about you. And so it's both like a mirror and a window that reflects back and allows you to look into yourself. How it and where it sort of became an interesting thing for us to develop over, I guess, 6 years now, is one of the bits in that CrossFit does very well. And speaking about intensity, that, you know, after owning an affiliate, well, Karianne, for almost 15 years, and, you know, I was involved and taught level ones and all of that. Constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity relative to physiological and psychological tolerances. And that's a beautiful statement, and a great one. And my question to myself, first of all, was always, what are those psychological tolerances? I was a, you know, all-American college athlete, special forces, like training. The mental piece is always what gave me, I felt like, it makes up for talent. It makes up for skill. It allows you to acquire skill and become more talented But that mental component was something that, when I first heard the quote, the greatest adaptation in CrossFit occurs between your ears, I was like, beautiful. That's exactly it. That's describing every athlete's validated experience of their pursuit and whatever their sport is. And unfortunately, I don't think that the industry touches it. I don't think that fitness touches psychological tolerances, and not necessarily just CrossFit, or not CrossFit, but the fitness industry as a whole, in fact, preys on scarcity. It preys on disordered thinking
and shutting off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
not
shutting
yeah.
off. Yeah. And so, so what Between the Ears seeks to do is to complement movement practices, movement pursuits, to allow that individual to not just be exposed to whatever their weaknesses are, but to train them. And that's really where it does look at more of an intention. It looks at, being trauma informed, having a professional coaching kind of, like I'm a therapist, so there's that as well, like having the ability to counsel and provide therapy, but not having it something be necessarily super clinical. And that's kind of where that was always the genesis of Between the Ears was always, how do we provide an experience for someone to establish like a deeper connection to themselves, and so that they can express who they are to their fullest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it really started with some, I mean, we still do more of like an event type thing, or maybe like a workout that's, kind of not about the workout, but it's a movement practice. But then from the day-to-day application, as it relates to kind of fitness, we're asking people to like have where they're at, how they feel, what their intention is. That informs what they do. So the norm in our gym, because we have a brick and mortar gym, is for people to be doing different things. So you're not pulled into, if I'm having a kind of a shitty day, I'm tired, I'm sort of like, look, I need to like give myself a break today. And Bill is having the best day of his life and just wants to like express and like get after it. That is acceptable. That's the norm. And people are being coached for their own needs. And that ultimately, I think, is what builds on people's fitness and their desire to come back to the gym. I mean, anybody can crush themselves even if they don't feel like it. Endorphins work. It's just like, well, what's the impact the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year? So yeah, it's kind of Between the Ears is everything from the everyday stuff, how to apply that to your movement practice and that lens, all the way to more events that are approachable for people, but not like, as Bill always says, like, it'd be great if like people climbing Mount Kilimanjaro or ascending Everest or doing something epic. That's awesome. But that's not approachable for a lot of people. And even if you do that, how are you carrying that forward and practicing those things that you learned beyond that in the day to day? And I think that's the piece that's kind of sometimes missing in life with, but movement and experience and impact. I mean, we look at like I did an Ironman, doing the games, anything people have done, someone doing something that's just challenging for them in any way physically, we know it has such an impact. So how can we bring that down to the like micro level and make that part of someone's experience more regularly? That's kind of what we do. So
awesome. Yeah, that's a pretty good encapsulation for sure. And yeah, I'll just share a little bit of my journey with that whole concept of mental toughness is one of those concepts that gets thrown in there. And I was trying to be a regional games athlete at some point. I was working with James Fitzgerald, and then I switched to another coach. The other coach was more classic CrossFit kind of, if you will. She was encouraging me to go to SEAL Fit. Because again, as a doctor of physical therapy, doing a lot of CrossFit high level workouts, athletic workouts, I had that whole wellness continuum in my mind. And I'm like, I'm okay, going 30 seconds slower on this workout if my back's not going to hurt tomorrow.
Which is smart.
And yeah, again, like,
Yeah.
I didn't get into the top 30 in the Northeast regional. I finished whatever 67th or whatever. So, I'm okay with that. And you have to be okay with that. But the intentionality of the mental toughness piece is, I spoke with, and again, Bill, I'd love to hear your kind of thoughts. Well, both of you guys, of course, love to hear both your thoughts on this. But so her opinion was, you got to go do SEAL Fit, and you got to like suffer, and that's how you build mental toughness. And then I actually spoke with James Fitzgerald about it, and he was like, no, you need to build capacity, and you need to be comfortable with, like, I know I can pull a 142.0 on the rower and get off and go do 30 clean and jerks or whatever. And like, if that's the piece of it, it's just the mental toughness comes from the confidence of knowing what you're capable of. And if I go to 141.0, and literally when you get into the physiology and the interesting stuff like that, if that is what you're training for, then that having that awareness of 142 is just, and the goal is always to be right as close to red line as possible, and be able to go to the next thing. So there's some really interesting stuff. And again, you brought up the CrossFit Games before, and so when we're talking about these superhumans doing all these crazy things, it's really fascinating how they're kind of reinventing some of the things that exercise physiology never quite understood, because no one's ever done, let's do whatever 5 thrusters on the minute at 200 pounds for 20 minutes. And it's like, what? Right. And, you look in the textbooks, and I remember, I think it was CJ Martin, another famous CrossFit coach, or Ben Bergeron, talking about how they were like, I expect you to quit after like 6 minutes, and you get to 20 minutes and you're still kind of like, I can keep going. You want me to keep going?
Right.
Yeah. So there's this disconnect of what the body's capable of, and then the mental piece of it of like, I have that confidence, I'm going to keep pushing, and possibly not being connected to your body. So the intentionality, I heard that lovely word that I love in there. Again, running my gym is always something. I would include a lot of workouts for quality, and that's a big gymnastics kind of piece. But traditional CrossFit, for anyone listening, will say we're doing 4 rounds for time. So you're doing everything as fast as you can, less care about full range of motion, or, you're doing a hip shift, or you're doing butt wink, and we can get into all the fun terms. But yeah, it's really interesting, I think, seeing more of this higher quality type of content spill out into, again, the OPEX model. Sounds like you guys are kind of similar to that. I don't want to put you in a box, but of the individual design, where you can have 20 people working out in a group fitness class, but again, there might be 20 different workouts going on, whatever the space allows, based on, again, like, I don't know if you guys are into the Whoop, and I have mine on here, but tells me if I'm recovered enough. And again, when everyone doesn't have a Whoop, over the years, I've been exploring all the different things. You can reassess, baseline grip strength. And if your grip strength is down more than 10% from your baseline, maybe you need to scale things down, or go down, touch your toes. Again, maybe if you lose some capacity there. I also do a lot of online coaching. So that was kind of the way I could check their nervous system. You do a set of 10 deadlifts, and you reassess your toe touch. And if you got shorter in your toe touch, that's a sign that your nervous system's like, I don't like something that just happened. So, but that intentionality, and again, being able to have those deeper conversations.
Yeah. And I think because I think the question about the confidence is a good one for Bill. And I think that's something we've talked about a lot, like confidence versus belief. But just before, like one of the things that we do is, and same thing, like for quality, we're sort of non-dogmatic. So a lot of the people that come here, they're either not interested in CrossFit, or maybe they were at CrossFit and they were looking for what was next. But it's definitely, Bill came up with like a self-assessment, and we have certain questions for people. And when I'll just ramble off. I listened to Rich Roll, Caroline Burkle. She was an Olympic swimmer. Whoever else I was watching the Lindsey Vonn documentary, skier. Okay. We have a friend who's a coach for the Jets. All high-level athletes, it seems to me, are doing an assessment before they're doing their conditioning, like, because it's it makes sense. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect, like in the CrossFit space, people want to be they want to be akin to these athletes, and they want to just do more workouts. They don't want to do the other stuff, the boring stuff, the self-assessment, the pulling back, the making adjustments, the isometric training, or the isolated training, doing more bodybuilders. Like, it's it's missing some of the stuff that, not that we're saying that these are the healthiest athletes in terms of, I mean, they're doing a lot of training, but those are pieces that are really, really important if you're going to, you can't just take the fun stuff, and unfortunately, that doesn't end well for people health-wise. But getting back to the maybe SEAL fit, I think that's an interesting. I'm sure you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think mental toughness isn't an action. It manifests in one, but that's not what it is. And I think mental toughness at its core is actually a myth. A myth not being a lie, but a myth being almost like an archetypical story that we tell ourselves that has meaning, that drives us towards whatever it may be. And with mental toughness and the myth of that, there is this confidence component that's necessary from a physical performance, from a capacity performance. Hey, what is confidence? Confidence is, I know I can because I have. I have confidence that I can maintain 143 per split, 10 unbroken clean and jerks because I've trained it. I've built the capacity. Programming is really like linear, like it's not all that difficult once you understand a couple concepts. And so we build up the confidence to know that I can because I have. And that's beautiful. And then we get into the real world, where we get into a scenario that's high stress, lots of uncontrollables, ambitious pursuits. And that capacity gets tested not just physically, where you're in your gym and you've got your right music on, you've had your sip of water. Like, real life comes along and just says, like, now what, motherfucker? Like, what are you gonna do when all of that stuff is gone? And that's the sort of opportunity for mental toughness and this myth to really take shape. And I think that when we step beyond confidence and then we enter the realm of belief, that's when we become who we believe we can, who that myth, that mythological character that is us. And to have belief, to develop belief, I think belief is really truth without proof. I believe I can do something, but I don't have any real evidence to necessarily support it. But there's this deeper desire, this truth. It sounds a lot like faith, but I mean, that kind of leads folks, I think, off the center of the target. And so, in my experience, at least, in being in special forces and going to selections and all of that, it's about belief. And it's about that, the mental toughness component isn't the outward, externally observable, like, wow, that dude's jacked, that person's super fit, that they're fast, they're this, they're that. It's something much, much deeper. And the belief is what burns, is such just a stronger fuel source. But we have no proof for that. And that's the beauty about belief. And what we can do in training is, through different workouts and through, the ability to work with people individually or remotely or group, is we want both. We want confidence and belief. We want to know that, hey, I know I can because I have, and I believe I will be able to do something completely new. And I think that is really some of the way to capture also this other thing that CrossFit does a wonderful job with putting on the map to people, is this notion of the unknown and the unknowable. That's not confidence. You can't have confidence for something you literally don't know, or don't even know that you don't know. It's more of that belief standpoint, if that kind of makes sense. And I think that's where mental toughness then is this. It's the genre of a type of book. It's not a specific book, if that makes sense.
It definitely does. And yeah, I love where that kind of just took us. That was awesome. Yeah, you mentioned the belief is truth without proof. And as we're recording this, I don't know if you guys are following the Alex Jones trial, but there's some funny stuff there. Basically, for anyone, whenever you listen to this, since it's going to be, live forever on the internet, is the judge said, just because you believe it does not mean it's true. You're not. That's the whole trial is about. Kind of saying you can't just go and say things. But right. Very different thought process. Sorry. So coming back to it though, but the thing that I again, I love that concept. There's a lot to unpack there. I feel like we can spend a few hours on that for sure. But and it sounds like that's kind of what you guys are invariably doing. That sounds like a big tenet of this endeavor of between the ears.
Yeah.
But for me, where I want to be selfish, and I call this Bono's health, but I also joke about the fact that, or say, I want to learn from what perspective where I can evolve and grow, because this is a forever learning thing. I think it's important to have that perspective as clinicians. So for the clinicians out there, seeing folks get injured, especially in the CrossFit space, I've definitely have the trouble where I want to say within CrossFit, 9 times out of 10, let's say 8 times out of 10, my the diagnosis and the prescription I give is rebuilding tendon health, because tendons tend to get ignored. And I think our current healthcare system has very poor treatment for tendons. Sounds like you guys are kind of, again, downstream helping address some of that stuff, or upstream. I might be confusing that myself. In terms of, like you said, doing some of the boring stuff, the isometrics, the tempo, these kind of things. So, but again, a lot of times when I get these folks who are, and they've gotten injections, they've tried, to change their ranges of motion, or all these modifications. And usually by the time I get to them, they've seen at least 10 other clinicians. And my advice to them is to go on a 12-week, very specific kind of tendon rebuilding program that's going to desensitize, and rebuild a lot of their confidence as well of what their body's capable of, but literally physiologically rebuilding the tendon. So, and I have to say, especially recently, especially out here in Boulder, where Colorado, people are very active. It's definitely their primary outlet, it seems like, for physical expression. They're not willing to take 12 weeks off from whatever they love to do, to, again, possibly add, 10 to 20 years of further life on the back end of that. Either I'm not doing a good enough job of selling that, or there is just that huge hurdle to overcome. And again, obviously, when you get buy-in, when you get trust as a brick and mortar, I think I'd love to hear, again, if you guys have dealt with that, if, just, again, having to convince people to do stuff that they would think is boring or not want to do. So it sounds like there's definitely some overlap there.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think, to your point, it kind of depends on where they're coming from. And one of the things, and I'll speak for myself, obviously being active is super important for people and healthy, and we want them to do that. There's also a very slippery slope to, like, your identity tied up in that. So when you're asking people, like, if there is someone injured and then all of a sudden they have to take a break from that or change something, the next question is like, well then, like, who am I, or what am I going to do? And that is tough. And that's, like, one of the things that's much deeper. And I think, like, it's not for just a trainer at a local CrossFit to sort of probably have the skills to deal with that. But yeah, I think for sure the relationship piece is huge. And to your point, like, that's, I think, building relationship with the person, trying to, for our sake here, we don't do certain movements. We don't do snatches. We don't do clean and jerks. If someone comes in and they know how to, and they're like, I really want to do this, we're not going to say, like, no, you may not do that in here. We don't have hirings. Like, some of it is building those things, carries, all the stuff that, people that's going to help with their longevity, with their health, and making fitness about something more than just trying to separate a little bit of, like, well, what does this say about me if I take this break or do this thing? I don't know if that was clear, but I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the identity component, which every single, I mean, even when we're talking about who's at higher risk for getting rhabdo, it's always going to be the former athlete, never the newbie. You know what I mean?
Sometimes the newbie.
Yes, but if somebody is, like, brand new, and they're brand new, and they know they're brand new, and you're a coach,
Sure,
and you're
they're not
leading a
gonna
class, you're gonna be like, okay, hey,
accidentally,
today yeah, you're not going to do 95-pound thrusters and pull-ups, of course. So, but it's 99% of the time it's the former athlete. Nah, man, and
Mhm.
like I'm good, or whomever. And so, what's that
Yeah.
about? It's about their identity. It's about who they believe they are. And yeah, there's a whole bunch you can unpack and analyze and dive into. But the truth of the matter is that you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that when you
Mhm.
have 3 minutes. I mean, I work with athletes in a clinical setting, and it's months. Being a veteran, being we have a suicide crisis among veterans, and I don't mean to be simplistic in that it's just a loss of identity. However, what happens is, and I've lived this and thankfully have survived the journey out of it, is that it does become an all-consuming, that's it. That's what you are. That's who you are. And throughout your pursuits and throughout your long, whatever you put into it, that is what fuels you. And it works because it is incredibly powerful. However, there's a lot of dysfunction that can occur in the pursuit of that as well. Never taking rest day, always going hard, blah, 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 blah. So when we look at the identity and how that's influencing how people show up and what they then choose to execute, um, many times it does it makes sense why someone who can't take 12 weeks off, because what does that say about them? I've never taken 12 weeks off. I've never, and we're not even saying sit on your ass. It's just like, hey, pull back a little bit. You think you're an athlete? Good. Learn something new. Master this basic trait, pelvis angle, this and that, the other engagements, all of the sort of like nerdy stuff that we could really get into. Um, and it's super tough, but yeah, what we do here is, we do set folks up for what we think is um, something that allows them to integrate both like the mental health component as well as the physical fitness thing, where there's less of an emphasis on performance. We want to improve our performance and our capacity to do, but we don't want to. It's just a slippery slope when performance becomes the external validation
Mhm.
that at first puts you on a pedestal and then it puts you into a prison. And
Right.
so, having been in the industry and outside of the industry too, and in different communities for, I think as long as we've been in, we as leaders of this brand and of this approach to integrative, holistic fitness, yeah, like why wouldn't you learn from your experiences? Why wouldn't you iterate? It's incredibly dangerous not to. And so
Yeah.
that's what we take that near and dear to our heart.
We have a good friend client who's also a PT, and I went to see him yesterday, and I was jotting down the exercises that I need to do, ironically for a tendon issue. And he said, I was like, let me just make sure I have these right. And he's like, this is good because I see people, and then 3 weeks later, I'm like, so show me your exercises. And they're like, oh yeah, I didn't do them. I don't even remember them. And it's like, what are you doing?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think there's probably 30% of the people that are gonna be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And then they might come see you in 10 years when they're like, yeah, I can't walk now or whatever.
Yep.
And then there's 30% that are like, okay, I'll kind of do it. And then there's 30% that are like, okay, like I get the longevity, I get the intention. But that's what's really funny. There are athletes that want to do all the hard things.
Mhm.
But the hardest thing might be, or you want to be mentally tough. Okay, you're telling me you want to be
Yeah.
mentally tough. You're telling me you're doing these hard things. That might include taking this step back, rebuilding, so sometimes I think it becomes a little bit selective in how we're defining that, but that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And where that takes me is, again, where I've shifted my business is trying to do these kind of annual orthopedic screenings, as I call them. And orthopedic is like, that's not a good word for the public, and they won't know what that means. And okay, cool. But like as we get into it, it literally is assessing their movement head to toe. So it's maybe a movement screen, but and to the concept of virtuosity, which CrossFit has certainly talked about, of doing the
Sure.
basics really, really well. And again, you see folks who are doing all these complex things, and then you're like, show me your hinge with a PVC pipe, and
Right.
they like can't do it right.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, no wonder you have herniated discs and, you know, numbness and pain down your right leg. Like you have all these imbalances that you've just been ignoring for X amount of time. Yeah, it's definitely my frustration. So you guys kind of hit a hot button for me trigger wise, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's the nature of the thing. So it sounds like, and again, you know, obviously you're trying to grow your brand, and I just had Kelly and Juliet Starrett on here.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, is there hope for the future? Because they're certainly on kind of
Yeah.
the you know, leading edge of the fitness space to some extent, and you know, I asked them, you know, what's the hope? And again, my thought is we need like a Jack LaLanne superhero to step up and be like, this is the one person who can spout some good wisdom and
Yeah.
basics and be like, eat your vegetables and, you know, like do some deep squats. And if you have a problem, like go see Dr. Bo or, you know, whatever. And, you know, that I don't think that's going to happen with the way there's
Hmm.
so much out there.
Right.
And it's, yeah, in this crazy age of over information. So I'm bringing them up because their ultimate stance, and I'd be, again, curious if this, because it sounds like this is kind of the path you guys are taking, is just be a node, is how Juliet put it, be a node within your community. So if you can affect 100 people within like a 10-mile radius of you or whatever, and they're going to come into your brick and mortar or even into your garage and do weekend workouts, that kind of thing, and you can affect those folks to be like, oh, let's start eating more locally sourced food, and, you know, let's
Sure.
support our farmer, and
Yeah.
and then also, yeah, like let's just meet up and create a little bit of a community, and that's kind of what the beauty of the original CrossFit was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And as you
Yeah.
were, you know, back in the day, it was like the joke was, hey, there's like a built-in asshole filter because you have to
Yeah.
check your ego at the door. And if this, you know, good-looking female next to you is squatting 200 pounds and you can only squat to depth like 100 pounds, you're like, I can't handle this. It's my identity, my
Right.
ego, all
Right.
that stuff. And so it's a really cool thing. I actually have a really good friend who's just starting kind of CrossFit. He's a physical therapist. He's in his 50s, up in Connecticut, and he's just kind of playing around with starting into that space. And it's really interesting, again, hearing him like, he's kind of in that OPEX model where they're doing map sessions, and he's like 30 minutes of like low intensity stuff. What? Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and it's definitely a mindset shift.
Yeah. I think to your point, the original, like where CrossFit started, I think we just need to sort of, at the least for that community. And I think the games were kind of a cool nod to that, like to be honest. Um, but getting back to some of the original concepts and thoughts and, like, I guess, an authentic approach to health. But, one of the things, and I've said this before, that I loved hearing when I heard it at seminars was they would say, we're not attached to thrusters and muscle ups, and you'll
Hmm.
probably remember this.
Hmm.
If tomorrow we found out that hula hooping and roller
Hmm.
skating, that was
Yep.
going to get us fitter, like we would
Hmm.
abandon all this.
Right.
And I guess I'm sort of wondering, like, well, okay, there are things we're saying, like, ooh, yeah, like nobody can deny the shoulder issues, the back issues, some of these things. And I get it that CrossFit is maybe uncovering, but at the same time, we have to look at it. And I think one of the pitfalls of CrossFit is not wanting to look at those areas of improvement. We're saying the red shirts are the best in the world, and this and that, and we're teaching this stuff. And I just think when people leave the seminar, we're missing what's happening at the affiliate level, and it's getting farther from that original source of be a node and teach these things and have that be part of your culture. And I don't know if that's some of the influence of the games or what that is, but I think the hope for the fitness industry at large is it is to me refreshing that there are people are listening to Huberman, Peter Attia. Like there's some people out there outside of just the CrossFit space that, it's cool to see like a Huberman quote somewhere and someone's like, oh wow, the brain,
Mm.
like that actually is attached to the rest of our body.
Yeah.
Like that's a new concept. Like there's some of those people, not that he's the or LA Fitness or Jack
Yeah.
LaLanne of,
Yeah.
but it's certainly that wasn't around 5 years ago, where people
Mhm.
were thinking about, "Ooh, how does this affect my mood? How does moving and sleeping?" And so, that is kind of our hope. Like we are purists to that being a change for people, as I said, where I started 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And so if that had to mean kind of abandoning CrossFit because it couldn't be true to that, then that's what it meant. And that's where we've kind of moved on to. So I think for sure for people, um, who see this or who want to change, like, yeah, you have to be that for the maybe your family, or maybe it is your gym or whatever it is. Um, but hopefully we're with people like that are sort of influential in the community.
Mhm.
And I think they are there. Uh, but I don't know, maybe it'll take some of these folks getting to a point where they realize they're not achieving longevity. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, the only way that we might get there is when they get there and they're like, "Oh crap, I can't pick up my kids. I can't pick up
Right.
my grandkids." Maybe we need to reevaluate. Um, so I think there's hope, but I think it's going to take more people like us, and um, kind of continuing to do the work for sure.
Yeah, and again, recently I've noticed one of the first things I do with every person in front of me is assess their breathing. So I just have them put a hand on their chest, hand on their belly, and can they even access that belly breathing? And for those that cannot, and Kelly mentioned this on that podcast, is just so folks just have difficulty self-soothing. And in this crazy world that we're all living in, and whether we're reading news or just stressful
Yeah.
with finances, all these different things that are not going away anytime soon. If you can start to self-soothe, and again with intentionality and these kind of concepts, and not have to rely on bourbon or marijuana to do that, whatever those things are, it's the breathing piece is, to me, I feel like it's too simple, or folks are just like, I came here to a doctor of physical therapy and I'm paying you X amount of dollars and all you're telling me is to breathe better. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah.
like all the science and my, I think I did the math at some point. I spent $500,000 in education on how the human body works.
Right.
And I'm like, unfortunately, comes back to
I know.
eat some broccoli, learn
Right,
to
right,
breathe with your
right.
belly. And like that covers 80% of your problems right here. And you continuing to chase all these shiny objects is what throws us off to some extent. And I've had people who I get them to buy in, and they're like, my back pain's gone within 2 days because I've just been really focusing on breathing my belly. I've had
Right.
people who like get angry at me and
Yeah.
cancel memberships or whatever, of like, I don't want to deal with breathing. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like I'm not the person for you.
Right.
So it's a very interesting time and space. And again, I have faith that those folks will eventually see the light,
Yeah.
or it's putting all the pieces together. And again, I certainly know I have my whether it's marketing and again manipulating, and however you call it. At some point early in my career, and again, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People, and my takeaway from that was like, here's how to manipulate the psychology and what people want to hear. Like, oh, you're pretty, you're shiny, and keep doing this thing, and maybe you can sneak in the spoonful
Yeah.
of medicine helps or spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, kind of thing. But it's like, or the compliment sandwich was always very popular in CrossFit. The barbell shrug guys would always talk about that, like, hey, your hair looks really nice today, your squat sucks, but hey, your shoes look really good too, or whatever. But sneaking that your squat sucks thing in there. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the marketing, unfortunately, the truth and the simple stuff doesn't seem to sell. So,
Well, you can't sell breathing. That's the
yeah.
thing, I think, but you can see Rich work out with the Airwave
mhm.
mouthpiece, which legit,
Yeah.
like, I'm sure there's people way, way smarter than I that have developed this thing. And it's like, so you're telling me I just need to put this thing in my mouth and I can just get superpower? And that's how it gets pitched, because it's way
Mhm.
easier to buy something to not
Right.
versus to acquire a new skill, to go
Mhm.
through the pain of backing off, you know? Um, from a military standpoint, our guns were fairly expensive as far as lasers and sights and scopes and this, da, 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 da. Yet if it turns on, it'll turn on you. And because of the technology of that, if you only relied on whatever that might be to place an accurate shot, and it goes away, and you don't know how to look down iron sights, or you don't know fundamentals of marksmanship, and this goes for anything in which technology has a say, you're a liability. You don't understand. You have this awesome fishing pole, but you don't know the first thing about fish and about their behavior and about any of that. And so telling somebody, I'm going to provide you with something that you're going to need to work on, that you're going to probably suck at first, that you're going to be super frustrated by, that you're going to maybe have to question your identity. I'm an athlete who does, when we first started doing just pure nasal breathing workouts, I did 7 wall balls, and I had to drop and be like, take this big old thing of air. And like, I had decent conditioning and stuff, but like learning that skill now to where it's like, yeah, hey, no problem. We'll do, it's just how we do things. And so, but there's the process in that. And yet if there's a product to buy that bypasses the actual pursuit, that's the weight belts, all of that stuff. I mean, same thing.
Well, and it's the same,
not easy sell.
the mindset, that word kind of is tough, like for us, because like mindset's a great word. It's just kind of like how it's been overused and butchered. And, but I suppose it's a bit of the sugar makes the medicine go down thing. If, because we have a seminar that we've developed that's great for CrossFit gyms, non-CrossFit gyms, whatever. Like it's not competing with CrossFit or saying like, hey, you should stop doing this. It's applying that lens that we're talking about to whatever you're doing. It could be yoga, CrossFit, whatever. I think it works. I think it is one of the things to start making that shift and help people improve their health, improve their relationship to CrossFit, make improvements to their fitness and all those things. But if the sell is a little bit of like, we are talking about mindset, but it's probably not quite like, it's not like we're going to spray them with a hose and do the Navy SEAL fit thing. But I suppose if that is kind of like, hey, this is going to help your performance, if that's the sell to get them to kind of like, oh yeah, that's what I want, then great. Like, fine. Like, that's okay. It's not a lie. It's not to your point, is it a manipulation? I don't know. It will help that. It'll also help many other things. But so I think that's the kind of, little bit of a play with how we approach these things, because, when Bill first started having some questions, I'll say that, about CrossFit and maybe how I moved or how I got things done in my workouts. Like I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to, I was that person, and it did take me a long time. So I do get it. And that's not really it can sound very judgmental, and that's wrong, because it did take my own process. So I think if we can provide people that little bit of a nugget that kind of gets them thinking about like, maybe it isn't initially performance or how do I get better at this, but provides them something bigger as well. That's kind of our goal. So
yeah, and I'll just add in again that whole concept of, even if you're a weekend warrior, that again, hopefully that term doesn't offend anyone, but the concept that if you're comparing yourself to these top tier athletes, like they spend whatever Russell Wilson spends over $5 million on his body in a year, kind of thing, whatever the numbers are. It's at the end of the day, LeBron James sleeps 12 hours a night. Like these are things that can we take away the basics? And obviously, again, if you're a weekend warrior, like, and you're not willing to spend $5,000 a year on your body, if you don't have that budgeted in and you want to kind of, keep driving, as again, I'll give Kelly Starrett credit for that one, with the emergency brake on, and grinding down your knee or grinding down your shoulder until it breaks. Those are the conversations that are tough to have for sure. So I don't know. I feel like I'm turning this into my whining about the marketing around trying to convince people.
Yeah, but I think it's in line with like, and I usually just take a snapshot of evaluating and assessing someone, not through a judgment, but through an observation of what they're saying, what they're doing, what they're not saying, what they're not doing. You either fall into one of three camps. You're either exercising, you're training, or you're competing. And you can't live in it would be beneficial. You can't live in in only one of those all the time. There's beauty to just being exercising, just moving your body, being out, being active, no real intent, no deeper order, no, frankly, sacrifice. Then you move into the training component, and I can always tell the degree of how much someone's training by how much they're sacrificing. Because if nothing gets removed, and essentially that's a way of saying, if you don't prioritize whatever it is you're training for by deprioritizing other things, you're not training, you're exercising. And if you're competing, then it's like, yeah, hey, this is do or die. This is put it all out on the line there. And if you're in the people like, no, I'm competing. And if you're never not exercising, or if you're never actually training, or if you're training but not sacrificing, or never competing when you're training, and you can kind of see like, where do people fall into those buckets, and when are they getting outside of it? So for somebody who's always training, this 24/7 365 training cycle, and we love to talk about whatever the ironies of all of social stuff, but like, okay, like, yeah, I just need to be like a fucking Navy SEAL. I just need to be like David Castro. Okay, right on. So and everybody that's been on knows what's go ahead, tell me about red phase. When you come back and you redeploy and you're back from the mission, what do? It's rest, recovery, refit. You take some leave. You're not doing the deed anymore. You're resting, you're recovering, you're maybe hopefully catching up on family stuff and all of that. And then you get out of that, then all right, we're getting back into the train up, going to different schools, doing different ranges, like doing like higher
David
order
Goggins
training.
and Jocko are telling you if you don't get up at 3 a.m. every day.
Well,
but yes, that's the competing message of there's got to be a day where.
But for the normal, yeah, for sure. And the fear is, I think it's, yeah, I mean, look, the fear is if I sleep in past 4:30 or 5 or whatever it might be today, then that means I'm opening up the slippery slope to never waking up and never pursuing my goals. And I feel like that's pretty low. Like that's pretty weak in my mind. If that's what has to happen, then that's weak. Because like no, like being actually more capable is saying like, oh no, I did that. I slept in. I didn't wake up today. And that has literally no bearing on who I am, because I'm going to continue to elevate and be my best self, versus living in this fear of not wanting to be somebody. How about we look more into the acceptance of who we're actually going to be, not the fear of avoiding who we don't want to be. So, but yeah, exercising, training and competing, we encourage people like experience what it's like for all of those, and what did you learn? But I think we get stuck. It's common to get stuck, and I'm always training, and it's like, well, then you're probably not training actually.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with John McCaskill or Dr. Teresa Larson, who's a physical therapist I've had on here. She taught the Kelly Starrett mobility movement course for a while with CrossFit. I'm actually in their WHOOP group, so with a bunch of Marines and a lot of military guys, and it tells you like the winner of the week for your recovery and your sleep percentage. And as well as your strain. There is someone just joined the group, and like by every morning, I think he's doing like a 30-mile run, and his strain is like maxed out.
He's
like,
winning the strain.
He's winning the strain, and I'm like, I'm not trying to compete with that exactly. So it's that awareness of like, I'm going to win the recovery piece,
right?
And again, with a kid on the way, I'm like, you have to bank your sleep now, right? So it's going to be very interesting to track that, but. There's definitely the difference of identity, and I'm just really, really appreciate you guys sharing all these concepts. I did want to, before we wrap up, being respectful of your time, we did throw a few terms out that I wanted to add the glossary here at the end of red
Sure.
shirts was the folks that teach the seminar staff at CrossFit. So they wear a red shirt. That's the coach. That's the seminar staff. Rhabdo, Bill mentioned, is short for rhabdomyolysis, which is a common thing that happens with the kind of perfect storm of dehydration, being mentally a former athlete and trying to get back into a really high level, and you can do more muscle damage than you probably should do. So, and as one of my first CrossFit classes ever, the coach said, if you're peeing Coca-Cola tomorrow, go to the emergency room. Don't call me, which was fun. I did not get rhabdo that time, but yeah, rhabdomyolysis is again relatively important thing. And again, CrossFit got a lot of flack back in around that time. I was entering 2010 for having was it Uncle Rhabdo with the the dialysis machine hooked up to him, and at the end of the day, though, again, a lot of the negatives of CrossFit, I'll put the positive spin on it and say I think they did do more to bring attention to that stuff, and we've probably seen more rhabdo severe cases with pelotons and spin classes than the mix of injuries in CrossFit.
Sure.
But yeah, anyway. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have any. I think those are the big terms that I wrote down to make sure we touched on for anyone who's like, what's that mean? Because I've definitely gotten some negative or people being like, hey, what did that thing mean? And I'm not going to take an hour and do show notes. Sorry, guys. But I'm just here selfishly again, so I can have fun conversations with awesome human beings. So if you guys have any closing thoughts before we let you go, I'd love to hear. Again, I just want to double down on the fact that I love that there's more, again, folks like you doing these things. And I want to be able to kind of, again, support y'all in any way and get these kind of messages out there for sure. So any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, same for you. And we love these conversations, and that's a lot of our.
Just appreciate to have a chat. And I think, the connecting with people who are curious and who are open-minded and who are willing to listen and learn and suspend perhaps what they've heard or repeated many, many times in their own right is that's a beautiful thing. And it does restore some hope. And, that's really cool. So thank you, man.
Yeah, we are, like I said, just on the beginnings of this seminar. So that's kind of a cool thing for us, because I think being able to get out there to other trainers and coaches is where it's, strength in numbers and people going back and learning something to share with their communities. So that's something we're embarking on. So I'll be sure to share when we have info for you, and just spreading the word to anyone that is also curious. So.
Yeah. And we've had the website down there, betweentheears.com. That's BTWN, theears.com. Don't add that third E like Karianne did when she texted me earlier. That's okay. And again, if we will have links, should be in the show notes wherever you guys are watching or listening to this. Cool. But anywhere else folks can connect with you, or is that just the best place is the website? Yeah,
Instagram. We've same thing, Between the Ears, like that on Instagram, Between the Ears Fitness, Bill Anthes, Karianne Anthes. So.
And Bill, if you want to tell the horse story, maybe at this point.
Oh yes.
If you spell Between the Ears the way any normal human would, with the E's, all of the E's, you'll be greeted by lovely sights of trails and pastures and the back of horses' heads. Yeah, and
that's not the Between the Ears.
When I first was trying to get that, those accounts secured, and that was what I saw. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me."
Hey, it's things we learn as we go, and that we would never otherwise have any knowledge of if you're not in that world. But very cool. So yeah, I mean, we touched on like a lot of my favorite words from life, whether virtuosity, authenticity, identity, even faith and belief and intention, quality. And have you guys actually, before I one of my favorite books that I recommend a lot, and I think Tim Ferriss is actually where I got this, is a book called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. Have you guys heard of that one?
No.
It's like $7 or something on Amazon, I think. And it's written by, he was a Jesuit priest that ended up getting into all sorts of other religions and just seeing like where, let's not make it about party lines kind of thing, and let's see where the
Mhm.
spirituality can actually bring us. And very cool book. I highly recommend. Very quick read too. A lot
Yeah,
of deep
awesome.
stuff to unpack and probably requires some rereads. But I think Tim Ferriss has like 30 copies that he just keeps at all times that he gives out to whoever comes by his
Oh,
house.
cool.
And so I've kind of embraced that, but I wanted to bring that up because I think there was a lot of the stuff we're talking about here that definitely connects that. And just
Yeah.
that concept of awareness for
Yeah.
me is one of the big takeaways. So again,
Yeah, no, thanks. We'll check that out.
yeah. Well, we'll sign off. You guys can stay
Yeah.
on, but again, appreciate you guys being here. I know I got at least 1% better today, as I like to say. And without further ado, we are signing off. And